Hi, this is Denise Estrada, and you're watching True School Sports.
All right, thank
Well, it's personal between me and you, and I'm going to do you some serious harm, you big stiff idiot.
The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing games are missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Good to be here. Now, we got October 15th. Y'all can say the date, or maybe don't say the date, because a lot of people really aren't that excited about this fight. They're not really happy about the fact that, Devin Haney, even though it is contractually obligated, a lot of people, because of how the first fight played out, are not excited that Devin Haney is fighting George Kambsos Jr. again in a rematch in Australia. And a lot of that is just due to the fact that George Kambsos Jr. really laid a big egg on the last fight. He really didn't make the fight competitive the way we wanted to. And he left a lot to be desired, and Devin Haney, for lack of a better term, just outclassed him. And now we come to this rematch, right? There's not as much hype as the first time around. There's they're fighting in a smaller stadium, but it's a prestigious stadium. Don't get it twisted. They're fighting in the Rod Laver Arena. If you're a tennis fan like me, you know about the Rod Laver Arena. It's very prestigious, but it's not as big as Marvel Stadium. That's number two. Then now you got George Kambsos Jr. And this is what I really wanted to camp out on. Is George Kambsos Jr. has pretty much said, look, I'm 29 years old. It's all or nothing. It's do or die. If I don't win this fight, I am retiring from the sport of boxing. Now, if you've watched any of George Kambsos Jr.'s most recent interviews, it's a much different man. It's a much different approach than the guy from the first fight. In the first fight, George Kambsos Jr. was calling Devin Haney a rat. He was calling him an informant and everything under the sun. And it was entertaining, but the mind games didn't work. Devin Haney, too composed. He's not as immature as T.O. emotionally. He's got his emotions in check a lot more than T.O. So those mind games that he put on T.O. didn't quite affect Devin Haney. But he's talking about retirement. And one thing I know about boxing is that when you get a fighter, whether he be young, whether he be old, when you get a fighter and talking about retirement before they even fought, it normally means they're already halfway out the door. They've mentally checked out. And when you factor in George Kambsos Jr. has already, think about it. He can lose Devin Haney again, right? But does he really have anything to hang his hat about if he loses to Devin Haney? Devin Haney might fuck around and become pound king of boxing one day. He may go on to be a Hall of Famer. We don't know, but he's a very good fighter, a great fighter for his age. We don't know how he's going to develop moving forward, but all signs point to Devin Haney's trajectory being very upward in boxing. So if he loses to him twice and Devin Haney goes on to become, let's say, a Hall of Fame fighter, that won't look bad on his resume. And he beat a really great fighter in Teofimo Lopez as well. And he's beating, world champions, ex-world champions like Mickey Bay and Lee Selby in the backyards. And he's now going to get a $10 million payday in this fight. He just got a $10 million payday his last fight. So he set himself up for life after boxing. $20 million, if you manage it and invest it right, is way more than enough money to live off of and take care of your family for the rest of your life. Not even factoring in that George Kambsos Jr., because of what he's done in boxing, will get more opportunities because of who he is. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said and with that being established, George doesn't necessarily need boxing no more. And see, that's the tricky thing about the sport of boxing. A lot of fighters in boxing come from backgrounds and they get into the sport for monetary reasons. They get into the sport because they want to accrue and obtain financial wealth and make money for themselves and their families and stuff. And just boxing gives them a life that they otherwise would have never attained without the sport. But then once you get to a certain level financially, for many fighters, they don't have that same hunger they once had for the sport. And that could be happening with George Kambsos Jr. I definitely think that could be a thing. Or maybe, just maybe, these are part of the mind games. This is part of the art of war. Let him think he's undisputed, because, truth be told, even though Devin has the belts, he's not really quite undisputed just yet, because he's still got to get through George Kambsos Jr. So my boy Johnny was explaining this to me the other day. I was talking boxing with my boy Johnny, and he was saying, Devin Haney, yeah, he won the first fight, but what that means is now he's just the number one contender. He has the belts, but he's the number one contender. He's still got to beat George again. So if he don't beat George, he's not really the undisputed in my friend's eyes. But yeah, Devin's got to beat him again. Everyone's now saying that Devin is going to school him and giving George absolutely no chance in the world. And now I think George is in a position now where he's in a position that's actually more advantageous, that he's more used to, that he's actually fought much better in, and that is the position of being the underdog, where there are little to no expectations placed upon you. And, you know, I truthfully believe this could, stylistically, I still think Devin Haney beats the George, honestly. But this could bring out a much better George Kambsos Jr. And I feel like if Devin Haney has any form of a letdown, now we can start saying some of the same things in this rematch that we used to say about Teofimo Lopez when George fought him. If Devin Haney has any form of a letdown, if he's not the guy he was in the last fight, and George Kambsos Jr. raises his level of performance in this fight, then this could wind up being a better fight than people think. And, you know, like we've seen it many times in the past recently. Like, for example, a lot of us didn't want to see the third Fury Wilder fight and wound up being the best fight in the trilogy. So you just never know. Sometimes the rematches that we don't want in boxing ultimately wind up being some of the best fights. So this fight for me, when I look at it from the Devin Haney side of things, I look at it as, okay, how disciplined and consistent of a champion will Devin Haney go on to become? Will Devin Haney be a guy who was a one-off, much like kind of like Tio was when he beat Lomachenko, or will Devin Haney show himself to be a consistent champion who can get the job done when the fight is looked at to be more competitive, and get the job done when he's a heavy favorite? You know, so far in his career, he's beaten some good guys, some good veteran fighters, guys like Linares, guys like, you know, Gamboa, guys like Jojo Diaz, and then George Kambsos Jr. in hostile territory on the road. But can he do it again is the question, because George Kambsos Jr., he's in a compromised position now to where he has nothing to lose, because really everybody expects Devin Haney to go out there and, you know, 118 to 110, 120 to 108, 117 to 111 in his ass. You DM, outbox him. So he's got nothing to lose. If that happens to him, that was supposed to happen. But he's got everything to gain, because if he actually raises his level of competition and beats Devin, or makes it a competitive fight to where he could get a decision in Australia, then he's got everything to gain. And now we're talking about George being a two-time champion, overcoming the great Devin Haney, beating 2 of the 4 quote-unquote kings of the 135, like T.O. and Ryan and Tank and now Devin. So it really is a make-or-break, do-or-die fight for George, because this fight really will enhance his reputation if he can get the win. But if he loses, really it's expected of him. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw my thoughts out there on the fight. You know, George Kambosos, some of the things he's been saying. You know, we'll be covering this fight as it gets closer and closer here on True School Sports. But that's the news. George Kambsos Jr. talking about retirement before the Devin Haney rematch at 29 years old. So is it the art of war? Is he just letting him think he's undisputed? Or do you guys think these are legitimate claims by George Kambsos Jr. about retiring? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you guys take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care, guys. Thank you for watching another video on True School Sports, the home of boxing. If you made it this far, do me a favor and do yourself a damn favor. Hit that subscribe button and surely you will not be disappointed. You know, True School Sports bringing you the latest and greatest, the untouchable, you know, boxing content, interviews, news videos, breakdowns, live fight reaction extravaganza. We've got a great community of people here, boxing fans all over the world, from America to the UK to Australia, and on and on and on. So join the empire today. Hit that subscribe button. Take care and God.